Good evening, beautiful woman. Welcome to Isaya's Inspiring Evenings, a podcast full of goddess series, witches' secrets, colors of women and fairy seasons to integrate serenity, abundance, joy, and magic into your life. I am Isaya Bell, creatrix, magical pragmatic inspiration mentor, tech goddess teacher, and traveling priestess. And this podcast aims to accompany you for peaceful and inspiring evenings. Isaya's Inspiring Evenings has had various iterations and styles and is published irregularly. Subscribe to the podcast on the platform of your choice to be informed of the publication of each new episode. If you like this podcast, please support it by leaving stars, blue thumbs, and reviews on whatever platform you listen to me. In 2024, there are going to be 5 series in it. For now, all different, all aiming to inspire the audience, all telling stories, each complementing each other. One series titled Women Lighting the Way is about women's stories, centering around the past or future speakers from the various Women Lighting the Way summits, adding to the virtual library of women's stories and providing a much-needed counterpoint to the many men's stories going around in our world of patriarchy. This is one of those episodes, and I am happy to invite you to listen to the story of Callie Di Nello, recorded in 2023, entitled Using My Inner GPS for Creative Joy and Wellbeing. Enjoy!
Hello and welcome. My name is Callie Di Nello and I live, work and play in a beautiful leafy green part of London, England, which is famous around the world for not only its tennis championships, but also as the home of these little guys, the original eco-warriors, the Wombles. Today I'd like to share with you my story about how I learned to follow my inner GPS for creative well-being and joy, and it really helped to get me through some rocky patches. But before I share my story with you, I'd like to share my understanding of what our inner GPS actually is. So have you ever had a feeling that something was not quite right and you later on discovered that your intuition was absolutely spot on? Or perhaps you've had a sudden idea that's come out of the blue, or a burst of inspiration that led to a real breakthrough. These are fabulous examples of how our intuition can help to lead us towards greater clarity and fulfillment. And on the rare occasions I've not followed my intuition, I have to say things have always gone either a bit skew-if or a lot wrong. So hold on, what about the GPS part? Well, if you've ever used sat-nav to navigate your way through built-up cities or long stretches of beautiful countryside, you might know that your sat-nav gizmo uses something techie that's called GPS, a global positioning system, and this cleverly uses signals from orbiting satellites way up high to accurately position you. So I like to think of my inner GPS as a gut positioning system. My gut instinct is always the mother seat of wisdom, working away as intuition, and this responds to internal and external signals, which helps to position me. And in modern day life, we seem to be taught to value logic and reason over this beautiful innate gift that we're born with. But as our inner GPS, our intuition is a super reliable source of wisdom and guidance that can really help us to navigate through life's challenges and opportunities. So here's my story of how I learned to use my inner GPS and to trust it through some tough times. As all good stories begin, once upon a time, I found myself searching online for some graphics that I could use in a digital collage. So this was in the summer of 2010, way before the time of free images galore from the likes of Pixabay, Pexels, Canva. And if I searched my memory banks, I think I was looking for some Scrabble letters from a popular word board game. And I wanted these in digital format to make a collage. Anyway, thanks to Google's magnificent search engine, I stumbled across some amazing graphics on a website called Artellaland. And they had the most amazing array of goodies for sale, ebooks, digital magazines. Everything was so gorgeous, so colourful. And I remember my inner magpie was utterly charmed. And I spent ages browsing through their different pages, reading their blog. And as I carried on browsing, I noticed an advertisement for something called ARTbundance coaching certification. And as I looked at this information more closely, I realized the program was beginning in less than 2 weeks' time. And so the more I read, the more I felt my body go all tingly. I'd never really thought about creativity as a thing since I stopped doing art at school around the age of 14. I didn't recognize that feeling at the time, but what I know now was that my inner GPS was spinning like crazy. And when I had time to capture my breath, I actually found myself enrolled on the coaching program, a whole 16 weeks of rediscovering my creative spark. And that meant pushing myself way beyond my comfort zone because I wasn't an artist and I wasn't even the remotest bit creative. But I had been working as a coach for a number of years, and this felt, well, it just felt like I had to do this. And it was going to be pretty intense. We had to do things like practicums, practice coaching sessions with real clients, completely unknown to us. We had to do write-ups, reflective practice journals, as well as doing our artwork. Then we had to do a practice workshop, something coaching related that we'd created ourselves. And again, this was in 2010, which is way before Zoom. Teleconferencing was a relatively new thing. And definitely no breakout rooms. I was reliant on just about a good enough broadband speed to deliver my session. And then after that, we have more write-ups, more gathering of feedback, etc., etc. And so I noticed right from the beginning that I had a real issue around not being good enough. Everyone's creative submissions were so beautiful, and I felt mine was so lame. Everyone else had these amazing ideas. But I felt completely stuck, and I was sticking as tight as I could to my comfort zone. So one of the most memorable assignments was one of our first. It was about creating our muse. We got to meet and create our own muse, and I stuck to my comfort zone. I created it as a digital collage, and it took me a few weeks to get into the rhythm of the classes, the art assignments, the practice sessions, to enjoy the process of creating in my own unique way, and indeed just working with people and teleconferencing. And it took me much longer to find out the name of my muse. She eventually told me. Her name was Galena Grace, and she had a really bad habit of waking up at 4 a.m. to get up and do things. She wouldn't let me rest or go back to sleep until I'd created something. But her name really intrigued me. I mean, Galena is such an unusual name, and I don't remember ever meeting anyone of that name. So I looked up the meaning of her name. In Greek, Galena means healer. Okay. And then it also means calm, so calm healer. And other meanings of grace as like blessings, generosity. So my muse had quite a fabulous name, although I didn't understand its meaning. Calm healer with blessings, goodness, generosity. I mean, I was really thankful for her showing up in my life and for driving my creative spirit forward, despite the 4 a.m. alarm calls. And I ploughed on through the course and all its certification requirements and really grew as a person. And I'm really proud of what I did then, really pushing myself out of my comfort zone. So in early May 2011, I was really excited. I'd graduated. I was a coordinator for Mind, Body, Spirit authors, working with PR. And I really wanted to change. I wanted to use that power of creativity not only as a catalyst for my own self, but also as a change for positive transformations in others. And I can remember so vividly getting an email from Marnie, the founder of Artella, congratulating me. And I remember spinning around on the chair in the study, and I was looking from her email to then looking out of the window and up to some brilliant clear blue skies that were peeping through our purple beech tree. And I clearly recall saying out loud, okay, universe, what am I going to specialize in? And wouldn't you know it, the very next day, the universe answered. My inner GPS was just about to get a major update. The morning after receiving my graduation email, I was applying some body lotion before getting dressed. And I thought, oh, what on earth is that? I pressed a little harder with the heel of my left hand, and there was a lump. A large, hard lump that had absolutely no right to be where it was, and a feeling of dread washed over me. So I rang the doctors immediately to arrange an appointment and then phoned my mum. She was really calm, but urged me to call the doctors back and get an emergency appointment, which I did straight away, citing the family history of breast cancer. But, you know, I didn't need to wait for any clinical diagnosis. I knew exactly what was going on in my body. And right enough, within a couple of weeks, I had a clinical diagnosis, triple negative breast cancer. I was incredibly blessed because my breast cancer nurse was proper old school, a real matron type of nurse. And she knew exactly how to deliver the diagnosis to me and to my long-term partner. And as he sat there shell-shocked, I calmly looked at her, and I can remember this so clearly. I said, okay, let's get this ball rolling. I was to have surgery first, then chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Surgery needed to happen soon, very soon. And she urged me not to make a delay making a decision as to when I wanted to go in for surgery. And she handed me a leaflet as I got up to leave her room. This wonderful nurse gently suggested I might like to take a look. And within 10 minutes, I found myself with a specialist Macmillan nurse crying my eyes out. Chemotherapy meant I was going to lose my long hair, and there was no time to store any of my remaining eggs. No more children. It was all systems go, 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 go. So this diagnosis came when I was just 40 years young, and my maternal grandmother had died of breast cancer when I was 10. And I'd lived with her right up to the end. And somehow I'd always known that I too would have to deal with breast cancer at some point in my future. The maternal side of my family have a decidedly dodgy genetic link to breast tumours and other women cancers, such as ovarian cancer. But it was surprising because my survival instinct kicked in. I was far too young. I didn't have grandchildren, and I stubbornly decided that I was going to throw literally everything at it, medical, spiritual, alternative, you name it. Nothing was going to steal away my joy of meeting my future grandchildren. I wasn't ready to die. I just wasn't ready to go. I had so much more I wanted to do. So that afternoon was an afternoon of torturous phone calls and text messages. I just couldn't face calling my 20-year-old son who was in the army. And I'm forever grateful that my partner found the strength to do that for me. We made appointments to see a private dentist while booking in CT scans, radiology appointments. I mean, the tumour was fierce and was growing very fast, so we had to do everything in lightning quick time in order to try and outrun it. The very last call I made that afternoon was to Breast Cancer Haven. And that was the charity on the leaflet that this lovely nurse had handed to me. The most wonderful Scottish receptionist answered the phone, and she was just so sympathetic, so caring. And when I broke down after trying to say the word cancer, she was just wonderful. She booked me in for an induction session that week. And I discovered to my absolute delight that they did indeed offer a haven in a relentless and very, very bizarre week of medical scans, tests and checkups. So one of the things that Breast Cancer Haven had running at that time was drop-in art sessions facilitated by an art psychotherapist. And when I heard this, I felt as if my whole body had lit up like a Christmas tree. Again, I didn't quite know it back then, but my inner GPS was on fire, super excited by the idea of art sessions. So without any hesitation, I booked onto the next session that was actually running 2 days before my surgery date. And so that gave me something really nice to focus on, while it felt as if all the fires of hell were licking at my ankles. And so I can remember rocking up to this beautiful old church in a very busy part of central London, which was the home of Breast Cancer Haven. And that morning, I arrived really early for the session. I was a real keen bean. And I remember when they opened the rooms to this session, I was like a kid in a sweetie shop. There was rubber stamps, paints, pens, chalks, pastels, so much to choose from. So many different sizes of paper as well. I had no idea all this existed. And so many different colours. Now, there were 5 or 6 of us there, and we were all basking in a dappled sunlight beaming through the incredibly beautiful rose window. It was a gorgeous round window that had been made specifically in memory of one of the charity's previous clients. And you know how big church windows can be. So we were invited then to draw circles on paper, a wonderfully freeing exercise. Small circles, slightly bigger circles, but I felt really scared of filling the space. I needed space around mine. And so the art psychotherapist said, well, why don't you try working with a piece of A3 paper? I said, oh, yes, brilliant. Now, what kind of medium? There was chalks, the tool of inner childhood. So again, I used the chalks and I did the circles of varying sizes. So all my fears and worries and concerns just disappeared. I was so focused on drawing these circles, of feeling the grittiness of the chalk, of trying not to smudge the circles. It was just the most beautiful process. And as the session drew to a close, we were invited to look at our images from a different angle. And I looked at my A3 page with all these circles, and I saw a peacock feather. Our psychotherapist very gently suggested I go home and do some research, perhaps to see if there was something in there symbolically for me. So off I trotted, carrying my precious peacock drawing home on the tube, my inner GPS beeping with joy. And I remember diving into research mode as soon as I got home. And what I discovered absolutely stunned me. And I'll read a quote to you. In Tibetan Buddhism, the peacock symbolizes the bodhisattva. A peacock is said to eat poisonous plants, transforming their toxins into the radiant colors of its feathers. And that's by Rinpoche, that quote. So, oh my goddess, that was me. I was going to have to ingest poison, the chemotherapy. Was it going to make my colors even more beautiful? And there was so much more to the symbology of peacocks. So in Roman times, peacocks represented resurrection. Cool. In Chinese mythology, the glorious colors and eyes on the male peacock tails, they represented good luck and enhanced protection and awareness. That was me too. And in Greek mythology, the peacock was a sacred bird to goddess Hera, goddess of stars and skies, goddess of women, marriage, childbirth. And as I dug a little bit into her, I was intrigued by her protective reminder to recenter ourselves whenever we met obstacles, and to have patience and to champion endurance. I was so going to have to do all of those things, wasn't I? So little did I know that my chalk peacock feather that day would serve to transform not only my personal life, but also that of my future career. And so I came into this world of spirit animals. The peacock became my totem animal. The peacock was my armor against the exhausting, invasive medical treatment that I was going to endure over the next 9 months. And I did manage to attend some of those art sessions while also keeping up with my ARTbundance colleagues and their practice sessions. It was all very dependent on my energy levels and when medical appointments were. But I felt so supported by my creative friends who spanned the globe. Indeed, a couple became very close friends and who I am still very much connected with to this day, and they're in the USA. So for me, the whole process, I guess, of going through cancer treatment, of stripping back all I'd ever known so far, to allowing the possibility of something new, something wonderful, growing from this wretched experience, it became about harnessing the healing power of art, of really enjoying the creative process, not the outcome. And it didn't mask or take away the fear I had of dying, but it made me open to exploring the parts of my life that I actually wasn't really happy with. And I learned that no is a single sentence, and that's from Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements book. And that is something, I was a notorious people pleaser. That was unbelievably freeing. I learned that I knew my body better than anybody else, and I had to stand up for myself. I had to be assertive. I had to speak up when I knew that something was off. I became the patient expert, the expert patient indeed. And I had a rare reaction to one of the chemotherapy drugs, and my body was literally just moments away from physically dying. And I had to speak up for myself. I learned the power of hypnotherapy during chemotherapy in good ways and in not so good ways. And so my healing continued, layer by layer. So I'd like to fast forward now a couple of years on. The treatment for breast cancer had ended, and I appeared to be given the all clear. I was really loving my life as a creative transformation coach, and I seemed to be working predominantly with women who were seeking something of kind of like a spiritual transformation, a spiritual evolution. And I guess there's no surprises there. Healer, heal thyself, as the quote goes. I'd also really thrown myself headlong into volunteering within the cancer community. I wanted to give something back. I became an ambassador for Breast Cancer Haven. I sat on the Transforming Cancer Services steering group within London. And I also sat within the Macmillan Cancer Organisation, a huge organisation in the UK. And yet I also felt like I really needed to do more. My inner GPS was seeking something. And it felt really daft to say it out loud, but I wanted to go back to studying. I wanted to train as an art psychotherapist. I couldn't find any other way of working with the people I wanted to work with without training as an art psychotherapist. But oh boy, I'd have to go back to university and get a degree and then do a master's. And it would cost a lot and it would take me years. I mean, I think I worked out it was 8 or 9 years. Now, my partner thought I was absolutely crazy wanting to go back to learning. But as always, he fully supported me. I received an unconditional offer at Roehampton University, which is a well-respected and renowned university within the realms of psychotherapy here in the UK. But there was a fair degree of resistance going on inside of me, and I really couldn't understand it. I was unusually tearful, and I just had this really weird sense of gloom. What on earth was going on? And just before the deadline came to accept my place on the degree course, my father-in-law fell ill and was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's disease. So that's what my body had been picking up. That totally explained the gloom, the tearfulness, the heightened sensitivity to absolutely everything around me. I mean, how on earth could I keep up with a brand new to me uni timetable while attending all the appointments and the treatment that would be needed to support, my father and my mother-in-law? So I quietly did what I knew to be the best thing for my family as a whole and for myself, and I withdrew my application at Roehampton Uni. I chose instead later that year to begin a psychology degree through the Open University. So that way I could study during any free pockets of time. It would also be a way of keeping my focus on something else. I wouldn't be able to do my master's in art psychotherapy, of course, but there was something really nagging me. My inner GPS, obviously, wanted to learn, and create. And unsurprisingly, I guess, hindsight honestly is brilliant, I found it incredibly difficult to support my father-in-law and the family. It was like reliving my own difficult chemotherapy journey all over again. And I really struggled to cope, but I kept a brave face on for those nearest to me. Instead of speaking with them about it, I made a decision to stop working with clients until life kind of leveled itself out again. I just couldn't cope. So I continued to plough on with my studies, even when dear Pa died suddenly. It was the one small thing I could do for me, the one thing that really kept me going. And I really did my best to hold my partner and his mum in their grief, but grief has a way of catching up on us all. And I crashed absolutely spectacularly on the first anniversary of Pa's death. I'd not worked with any clients on a one-to-one basis during this time. Instead, I chose to offer light-hearted creative play shops, mostly online. And I'd also trained as a chakra dancing and meditation teacher. So I'd learned there's 2 very different ways of learning that I was going through right now: distance learning and really intense being in a very close space with a small group of people. And although I had a brilliant tutor, she wasn't my tutor, but she's someone I connected with in the Saturday class, I had to pay heed to what I was slowly learning was my inner GPS. I decided to pull the plug on my distance learning studies. I gave myself a year off to plan our wedding in Italy. And then I'd choose that time whether to reapply to Roehampton University or apply to Birkbeck in London. Because what I realised was that I really needed to be a part of a community, and that's a really familiar theme with me. This longing to be connected to kindred spirits, it's been with me since I was a little girl. But when you know it, life had other plans up its sleeve for me. So I was loving being creative, making a lot of decorations and accessories for the wedding. But I didn't know that sassy synchronicity was revving itself up in the background. So in early July 2018, we flew out to Florence in Italy to get married. And unbeknown to me, a lovely lady I'd met while volunteering at our local hospital's cancer patient group was also in Florence with her sister. And she was staying in the same hotel as us, 3 floors directly down from our room. How did I know this? Well, she'd seen a post on Instagram about me. I think it was some kind of World Football Championships or something. And she was like, shall we meet up for breakfast? So we did. And it turned out that they couldn't change their flights. They were warmly invited to our wedding, but they couldn't change their flights, which was the morning of our wedding. But they did come along to our vineyard tour the day before the wedding, and we had an amazing time. And we said, well, let's just catch up when we get back home. And this is where my inner GPS guided me towards another big leap in my creative joy and well-being evolution. So on our return home, I reconnected with the lady from Florence. She was now working with a small local cancer support centre. They happened to be looking for someone to lead art and creative activities as a volunteer. Was I interested? Well, of course I was. My inner GPS was spinning with joy. And a few months later on, I was invited to share my CV with the manager of the centre. Turns out my friend was requesting a 3-month sabbatical, and they thought I had the right qualifications and personal qualities to temporarily take over her role. And I really loved that role as a support officer. It was super challenging in so many ways, but supervision really helped to deal with those moments. And I ended up staying there for 6 months, and I learned so much more about myself again. I got to witness firsthand at just how profound the impact of expressive arts was on people going through treatment, as well as their carers, and for those who were moving forward with their lives after treatment had ended, and of course for those who were end of life. But after 6 months, my knees were in really bad shape, and I was really struggling to get into work on crutches. The trains were just too high for me to get on and off, particularly during crazy London rush hour, where no one moves and no one cares. And so I handed over the reins to a new support officer because my friend had decided to change career. And I went back to working with my one-to-one clients. But what I'd also discovered during my time at this wonderful centre was just how magical hypnotherapy was. Even the most basic of scripts seemed to work wonders on clients who were really struggling in so many ways to cope with the cancer journey. So I got to thinking, maybe this was what I should be doing. Maybe I should forget about training as an art psychotherapist. Maybe I should forget about going back to university. I could continue working as a creative transformation coach and train as a hypnotherapist. My inner GPS was whirring again. So I have a little secret to share with you. I like to go for the trickiest thing because I used to have in me, this little part of me that believed that I wouldn't succeed. And so true to form, I discovered the most rigorous training school to sign up with to train in hypnotherapy. I was particularly seeking a school that would train its hypnotherapists from a person-centered perspective. And, I'm still in the midst of training some 3 years on. The academic training is long complete, and I'm now a trainee psychotherapist working on completing all of those requirements. And it does take a really long time to get the required hours and to complete all the essays and the dissertation at a master's level, particularly for someone who's never even completed a foundation degree. But I really love the work. I love everything about it. But wouldn't you know, just before the final academic training completed, which is known as stage 3, there was whispers around the world of a highly contagious virus known as COVID. And before we could blink, we were not only living through a pandemic, but we also found ourselves in a lockdown situation. The remainder of our training went online, which was absolutely fine. It was purely psychotherapy, academia stuff. And it was also a blessing for me, to be honest. I've been really struggling more and more to get into central London with my crutches. So now I felt happy and content. I was loving doing my creative work. I was loving spending time on creative projects for my own mental and my own physical well-being. But I had no idea that my inner GPS was yet to receive yet another major update. As lockdown continued, I noticed lots more interesting classes, events, and workshops beginning to pop up online. So, of course, everyone was jumping on Zoom, a video communications app I've been using for the last couple of years for my work. And on Twitter, I discovered a company called Online Events who were organising mostly 2-hour online workshops for counsellors and therapists. I took part in a few and I really enjoyed all of them. And it was a really good way of staying connected within the therapy community, which can be notoriously, private. We don't tend to mix really. And in early April, a creative arts workshop caught my eye. It was about working creatively with art in therapy. And I thought, ooh, that sounds just like my cup of tea. So I booked and I attended and I fell in love with the teacher. I fell in love with the way she used creative arts and I fell in love with the organisation she created. My whole body was on fire with excitement and exhilaration. This was the missing piece of my puzzle. I knew it in my heart of hearts. And so 8 months later, in January 2021, I began training as a creative arts facilitator with APPCA. And I got to experience what it truly meant to be coming from a person-centered perspective and embraced it wholeheartedly. These 3 months of training brought me so much personal joy and fulfillment, and it brought me professionally full circle. I realized that I didn't have to train as an arts psychotherapist. I could still work very effectively and at depth with my existing skills and qualifications. And the way I work is very different to that of an arts psychotherapist. There's no analyzing images or anything like that. But working with creative arts and mindful arts is so profoundly liberating. And the fact that I can also use hypnotherapy too is just incredible. So 2 years on, I am now a trainee tutor with APPCA, and I really do feel that I've come full circle. As a learner, there is so much I still want to learn and will always want to learn. That's just the way that I am. But I'm now able to use the tools that I've used for my own healing and my own transformation with other people. And that makes my heart just absolutely sing with joy. So learning to trust my inner GPS over the years has stood me in really good stead, as well as gifting me the most unexpected joys and adventures. I've learned to listen to and honour my inner GPS. And I'm thrilled with my discovery that my happy place in life is through creative joy and well-being in all its shapes and guises. I mean, in a little over 10 years, my inner GPS has steered me through some incredibly difficult life hurdles, but it's also encouraged me to embrace my creative side and to take real joy and pride in that. I love to make messes with mixed media and textile art. I think knitting and crochet are always going to be my nemesis. But I love spending time making collages, working with watercolours, acrylics. And if my energies are low or in the wintertime, I like spending time hand sewing. It's really soothing. Some of you may know it as slow sewing or slow stitching. But trusting my inner GPS has helped me to change my life in countless ways for the better, as well as helping me to regain a real sense of well-being while discovering my true purpose in life. I mean, teaching others the art of creative well-being and helping them to fly free from their gilded cages. I work from my online studio and this physical one here. And it's a real creative sanctuary where they can let their true colours shine bright with the healing power of creative play, just as I have done so myself. So I really hope that you've enjoyed hearing my little story. And my biggest wish is that it may in some way inspire you and empower you to trust your own inner GPS and to step into your personal power to create a fulfilling life that you truly, truly desire and most of all deserve. Thank you for joining me.
That's it for this episode. The next one is still in creation. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, if you want to support this podcast, share, subscribe, and leave stars, blue thumbs, and a review on whichever platform you listen to. If you want to be accompanied in the change processes that life offers you, if you want to live a goddess life daily and participate in the awakening of feminine energy in the world, know the secrets of witches, and apply the rituals of fairies in your daily life, contact me on my website isayabelle.com. You can also subscribe to my newsletter to be informed of all the news in the real and virtual world of Isaya Belle. You will, of course, find this podcast on all platforms: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, etc., but also on YouTube and on my website, isayabell.com, on the podcast page.